Alright, what's up guys? My name is Zack, and today I am driving a 2012 Tesla Model S 40. Behind me is a single electric motor as well as a 40 kilowatt hour battery pack. Now I am super excited to be driving this Tesla Model S for a handful of reasons. First of all, it's been 13 years since this car was produced, and so we're going to be doing a little bit of a retrospect on the original Model S. But the second reason is the fact that this is one of the rarest Teslas ever made, and this is Tesla's first attempt at building an economy car. So we'll get into all of that a little bit later on. But if you would like to submit your own vehicle and have it reviewed here on the channel, you can head on over to my website, zackpraedel.com/submit. It's a quick and easy submission form. It takes under a minute to fill out, and I come out to you. And if you would like to see all of my videos weeks or sometimes months in advance, you can head on over to my Patreon for only $5 a month, and there's also exclusive audio content there. But let's get back to that single motor and 40 kilowatt hour battery. So that is what makes this car so special and so rare. Back in 2012, Tesla wanted to offer a budget-friendly option for their EVs. This was their only car that they were producing at the time, besides the then discontinued Tesla Roadster. So they decided to offer this for $49,000 with the smallest battery pack available, 40 kilowatt hour. You could step up to, of course, a 60 kilowatt hour battery. However, Tesla didn't want to produce two separate battery packs, so this car actually has a 60 kilowatt hour battery pack, but it only lets you charge up to 68%. Now, of course, you could go to the people at Tesla and say, hey, I want to upgrade my 40 kilowatt hour pack to a 60 kilowatt hour pack, which is just a software update, but they would charge you $10,000 to do so. You get 139 miles of range, which since then has gone down to about 120 miles of range on a quote-unquote full charge. We'll talk about how that number might be skewed a little bit later on. But how does it feel to drive the Tesla Model S 40 kilowatt hour? It's fine. It feels like a normal EV. When you put your foot down, it still accelerates relatively aggressively. It still has that instant torque, still feels like a fun EV. But you're going to have a lot less range. Of course, you're going to have a lot less power and traction than a dual motor. But honestly, it doesn't leave a whole lot to be desired for an average car, especially comparing it to like the Nissan Leaf in terms of mileage, not in terms of price, but in terms of mileage. This is a lot more fun than that. And it's rear-wheel drive. I mean, how cool is that? With that stuff out of the way, let's talk about the interior. Well, in front of me, I have a completely digital gauge cluster. I've always liked how this is laid out, and Tesla has since changed this design, but I do think that this was a really good way to usher people into EVs. It kind of looks like a tachometer, kind of looks like more traditional gauges that we're used to, but has some really unique offerings. On the steering wheel, on the left, we have our skip track and volume, and off to the right, we have another selector as well as voice commands and pages. The steering wheel is kind of chunky, not saying that I'm not, but definitely chunkier than a more modern Tesla product. Off to the left, we do have a climate control vent, and moving on to the door, we have power mirrors and power windows, all very, very minimalist. Moving into the center, even more minimalism with two climate vents on either side, but then we get our enormous infotainment system. Now, part of the 40 kilowatt hour is the fact that it did not get standard navigation or a standard backup camera. Remember, this was 6 years before a backup camera was legally required, so it didn't have to have one. Now, this one was optioned with one, but it didn't come standard. This is also pre-Apple CarPlay, of which Tesla still doesn't really do. And I'm not a big fan of this. I don't like when my climate controls are all ran through a screen. I've never liked when everything is reliant on a screen. However, I will say, although I don't like it, I think it has aged very, very well. It still feels like a modern Tesla system, and maybe that's because Tesla hasn't updated theirs in a while, but I think it holds its weight still here 13 years later. This doesn't feel like a 13-year-old system. Take a look at a Honda Civic from the same era. You could tell. I mean, that's like playing with a Sega Genesis compared to today's stuff. But this still looks fresh. You gotta hand it to Tesla for that. We do have a little cubby down below, and on the floor, we actually do have cup holders. We'll do a big friggin' bottle test here in the Tesla Model S 40, and it fails. Wah, 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 but at least it has cup holders. Then we do get a center console and the seats. The seats are heated, which is very nice to see. They are a little hard. Now, to be fair, this car does have 84,000 miles on it. It's 13 years old. You know, they could have hardened over time, and I don't remember the other first-gen Model S that I drove having particularly hard seats, but that's the reality of today's vehicle. However, speaking of seats, we do have back seats, so let's go do a back seat review. It's been a while since I've been in the back of a Model S, and it just turned off because I'm not sitting in the front anymore, which makes sense, but also for my one specific video, it's gonna start getting cold pretty quick here. So I'll try to be relatively quick. Seats are fine. Again, like the front seat, they are kind of hard, but that's okay. I do have climate vents back here, and I get to enjoy the giant sunroof. Not all Model S's in this era came with the glass roof. This one particularly was, or did come with it, I should say, but that's really it. I don't get a center console. I do get a center seat, which is nice to see, but I don't get a center console. I believe you could get Model S's with a third row added in the back. Don't quote me on that. It might have been aftermarket. I can't remember, but I remember seeing something about it. But I fit back here. I'm 5'11", not a small guy. My head's not hitting the ceiling. My knees are coming close to hitting the seat. If I scrunch them together, it does hit the seat, but not the end of the world. This was a relatively decent sized sedan, and it certainly feels that way. Let's hop into the very back. We'll take a quick look at the trunk and cargo space, and then we'll talk about the looks. Right around the back of the 2012 Model S 40, double click the trunk button here on the key fob, which looks kind of funny. And you got to help it out a little bit. The struts are kind of going. It's, 13 years old. Once we are back here, I always forget that the Model S's are hatchbacks, which is kind of funny to see. But once we are back here, nothing really too crazy to note. We can pull this up, and you do get some extra storage down below. We have a charger and things like that. Plenty of space here in the back of the Model S, and I've always liked that about this generation. We also do have a frunk, of course, which you can put more storage items into. I love that EVs do offer this because there's no ICE engine to take up the space. I guess saying ICE engine is kind of redundant because the E in ICE stands for engine, but you know what I mean. So very, very cool to see that. Now we gotta talk about the looks, and I don't love the look of the Model S, the original Model S, the fake grille up at the front. They were still kind of doing that, but it was a liaison to a lot of EV buyers that were coming from gasoline cars. EVs now make up a pretty decent chunk of the market, all said and done, but in 2012 they really didn't. So this was an entry to EVs for a lot of people, and so they didn't want the car to look too space agey and too different. Now they're pushing the envelope with the Cybertruck and the Robotaxi that we'll never get, and the Tesla Roadster that we'll never see, but this is a relatively reserved design, and I like that a lot. With all of that being said, let's get on to my final thoughts. What do I think driving this Tesla Model S 40 kilowatt hour? Well, it's cool to be driving something so rare. According to what I was able to find, they only made about 400 of these, or at least they only delivered about 400 of them. Now, take that with a grain of salt because this is the same as a 60, just with that locked battery pack, but the fact that this still has the locked battery pack makes it more rare. If half of 40 buyers purchased the extra 60, we're looking at under 200 cars having the original 40 battery pack capacity. That's kind of unique, and I think this car might become somewhat of a collector's item maybe down the road, much like we look at weird trim levels of 80s cars. I don't think these will ever go for Barrett-Jackson money, but I could see them being somewhat sought after because of the rarity. Now, according to Tesla, you have to pay the $10,000 to get the bigger battery pack. However, the owner told me that if you turn the car on and off again and jiggle the charger while it's charging, sometimes it'll confuse the car into letting you charge to 100% without paying $10,000. I'm not kidding. That is like the most Nintendo 64 blow on the cartridge, up, down, left, right, XXBY cheat code I've ever heard with a car. And that's something that is going to become a reality with this style of making economy cars, because this idea isn't anything new. Back in the 1970s, when AMC wanted to build an economy car during the oil crisis, they took their popular AMC Hornet and just chopped the back end of it off and made the Gremlin. It's nothing new to make an economy vehicle by just kind of chopping up an existing car. But what was new is doing it strictly through software and not hardware. To my knowledge, it hadn't been done before where everything was installed in the car, but it was just locked out. We see that now with BMW's heated seat subscription and other things like that, but in 2012, that wasn't really a thing. This was one of the first EVs to hit the mass market. And so it was applying an old idea to the new age. And I think it set the standard for a lot of vehicles moving forward. Now, due to poor sales, like I said, only 400, Tesla didn't see a reason to offer it, even though it was the cheapest at $50,000. Which is still a good chunk of change. This car was later replaced by the Model 3, offering standard range and a more affordable Tesla product, but this laid the groundwork. And I think above all, this is just a cool look back on an emerging technology that is so prominent here today. Teslas are all over the place, but in this era they weren't, and that is cool. That is special, that is rare, and that's what I love driving. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Huge thank you to Sean for letting me borrow his Model S for today's video. What a unique vehicle and a fun retrospect on Tesla itself. Sean has been absolutely wonderful to work with. I also filmed his father's Pontiac G8 last year. So huge thank you to him. He has a wonderful family and I appreciate them all very, very much. But I appreciate you watching the video. Don't forget to rate the video, comment on the video, and subscribe if you really liked it. Take care, guys.